everybody to the Get Back Guys podcast. It's been a little bit since I've seen Nick in the flesh, and he's him and I are sporting a similar hairdo I see over there.
Hair is pretty long. Hair is pretty long.
I like it. Looking good.
Almost bunnable.
Same. Kyle, Nick, Alex, all back. We took last week off. I texted the boys and was like, there's not a lot of news this week after Super Bowl. Why don't we take this week off? And nobody had any objections. So
and then the next day, the news of the week took you out.
It's
really got you going.
But before we get to Carson Wentz, Kyle has been adamant. Kyle's been adamant. We got to talk about J.J. Watt.
We're a sports show. We can't just skip over J.J. Watt.
J.J. Watt was released by the Texans in a video that he released breaking the news saying, I've asked my resignation or, I've asked to be released. And, if J.J. Watt comes into the office and says, you're going to release me, you don't argue. You let him go.
Don't want to fight that guy.
No. So I guess, Kyle, since you were hankering more than anybody to talk about this, what do you think of JJ getting released? Where do you think he's going to go?
Right from the initial get-go, I just figured that JJ Watt would want to go to the Bucks, seeing how it's nice sunny Florida and they just won under Tom Brady. But he could go anywhere. Who knows? It could be based on the money. It could be based on, what team looks poised to, go to a Super Bowl. Like he's always wanted to have one, obviously. So who knows where the heck he's going to go? But I'm just happy that the Texans didn't hold on to him. Like they actually did allow him to be released. So I'm just happy about that. I wish they could do the same for Watson, but obviously that's not going to happen. But Watt was a big important part of the Texans franchise for a while, and it's unfortunate that he had to leave the organization and go somewhere else, wherever that may be. But good on him to do what's best in his own self-interest.
Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm excited to see JJ Watt hopefully go play for a contender. The Bucks is really interesting because one, I'm not sure about his relationship with Tom, and two, I don't know if they'll have the cap space to get him just because they have to jump through so many hoops to keep Shaq Barrett and Levante David and Chris Godwin.
Yeah, they have a whole list.
So that's the only reason I wouldn't, but obviously if he takes a pay cut, that's definitely a possibility. I think the three main teams just that jump out to me right away would be, I actually think the Browns seems kind of I know there have been reports of that. Yeah. And because he knows what he's getting into there, he knows that he's going to, when you're getting towards the end of your career, maybe it's a good thing to play across another great pass rusher. And so going across of Myles Garrett would be really good. And that you have Baker Mayfield and you have a quarterback there. I think Green Bay is in play because that's his hometown team. We will be able to clear cap space if we need him. Obviously, I'll talk about that potentially a little bit more later. And the Steelers, I think, obviously with his brothers, the only issue is I don't know what's going on at quarterback. And if he wants to really go to a contender, there's such a mystery at the most important position for the Steelers that I would think he might need more clarity there if winning a Super Bowl is one or two on his list of things he needs when he goes to a place. But that defense would be awesome.
I think Super Bowl's the top of his list. I think it's getting that ring. He's got his money.
I think so too. So that's why I think Steelers might be a little less likely than others do, because who knows what's going on with Big Ben right now.
Yeah, I think Cleveland is top of his list. They've got plenty of money. They've got, why wouldn't it be? They got plenty of money. They got a quarterback who's finally wheeling and dealing. They got a great roster. They've got plenty of money to go get even more guys. If they move Odell, they might go look for a Chris Godwin or an Allen Robinson and bring in somebody, bring in JJ to play opposite Myles Garrett. I think the Rams, if they can get a little bit more space, might have a chance to get him. And I think he'd like to play with Aaron Donald. But Philly's got no shot in him, but I'm glad he's getting an opportunity to go. It feels like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady have shown, look, it's okay not to be with, and honestly, LeBron James, I think, has had a big deal with this, even though he plays in a different sport, but it's okay to play for another franchise. And I think he's I think he's like, it's okay for me to go. I really did give everything I had to this city. I mean, he really helped back in the day with the hurricane that hit them a couple of years ago. And, I hope he goes, and I hope Larry Fitzgerald goes wherever JJ Watt goes and they just go ring chasing together. Because that'd be awesome. Larry get a ring, maybe. Maybe he would consider the Cardinals. I feel like they're not as far out as people would consider. They got the cap space. They've got great players on defense.
That's a tough division to go into, and secure a bye. Right, when you think about teams that are going to have a bye, that division might have so many good teams that it might be kind of tough to get a one seed now. While if maybe he goes to the Washington football team if they secure a quarterback or something.
Doesn't matter. Philly is garbage. Speaking of Philadelphia, let me touch on the team that matters the most around here.
Did something happen?
Howie Roseman sucks. I've completely turned heel on Howie. Because I think he took what could have been a 5 to 10 year run at constant competitive and being a top dog in the NFC. I think he ruined, and I think it shows when you were so horrible when injuries hit hard, and you keep signing injury prone players, and you keep and then you keep signing guys who are just brutally below average to back those guys up. I think it showed a huge weakness in Howie, and I still think it was a mistake keeping him over Doug and Wentz. But now to that man, Wentz. I'm wearing his jersey for the audio listeners. I'm wearing the Carson Wentz jersey today in honor of him because I love Wentz because the man can literally do nothing but say the right thing, do the right thing, and the media still absolutely bashes him. And he literally does it. Even his farewell to Philadelphia was incredible. I read that and I was like, man, you just made it okay. It's like you just came, like you broke up with me and you just made me feel better. What the heck? Like, you shouldn't be doing that. So the Eagles got a second round pick this year, or a third round pick this year, and a second that could turn into a first next year from the Colts if he plays 70% of the snaps, 75% of the snaps. I didn't love the compensation at first. I think we could have done better. I've come down on that since the trade. I think it's actually pretty fair for a guy who played historically horrible last year, even though still, I think you are completely wrong if you think that most of that was on him. I think he is a fraction of the amount of problems we had. The media narrative, I put it on our Get Back Guys Twitter, but the media narrative did exactly what I thought it would the day he got traded. Was now the Colts are serious contenders. Wentz will finally have what he's never had in Philly, which is a great offensive line, great receivers. Not true, because the 1 year they were consistently strong and healthy, and he was pure dominance he had. And every year after, it's been back and forth, shaky to just horrific. I will miss Wentz. I think the Colts got a steal. If he can get back to maybe not a steal, but they got their guy for the next 5 to 10 years. If he can be anything back to what he was, which I think he will be. Frank Reich knows him. Frank Reich gets him. He'll always be loved with me in Philly. And it hurt me more than anything, just because it was finally a quarterback we could rally behind. The team finally was getting a high draft pick. They traded up twice to get him. And a lot of people have been saying the return was not enough in what we traded up to get Wentz for what to happen now. I think the fact that Wentz is huge and getting that Super Bowl, it was worth it. Trading up was worth it because in that time we got a Super Bowl. We don't get that without Carson Wentz. So I am heartbroken because it was the first quarterback we had drafted really since McNabb with such a high pick. I got to really rally behind him because I loved Mike Vick's comeback story. Sam Bradford, I never really got behind. Foles, I got behind in that Super Bowl run, but he was okay. And, that game against Oakland where he threw 7 touchdowns. Nick Foles is the ultimate enigma of the NFL.
True.
But if we, Hurts, I think Hurts can ball out. If Hurts can be that guy and really sell me this year, if he is the starter, then I'm all for it. If we go out and draft a guy like Justin Fields or what's the guy? Zach something. What's his name?
Trey Lance.
Zach
Wilson.
Zach Wilson
or Trey Lance are the other two names I was going to mention. Those two are guys that people are saying are Options for Philly at 6. I would rather roll with Hurts for a year, and I'd rather bring in like Jameis Winston or Cam Newton and let them compete in a camp.
Cam Newton in an Eagles helmet. Oh, that looks so good.
Honestly, though, I think Jalen Hurts beats
Easy
Cam Newton out. I think Jalen Hurts beats Cam Newton out in camp.
Well, the Cam Newton it depends if we get the Cam Newton who played in the Seattle game, maybe not. But if we get the rest of Cam Newton last year,
taking shots now.
He's not
I wouldn't mind Jacoby Brissett or Tyrod Taylor coming over to help Hurts. I think would be great for Philly. But I do think the move is to roll with Hurts this year and see what you really have and bring in like a guy, try to get Josh Rosen over, bring in somebody like that who could get a chance to start if, to really give him a fair shot, and then go get a wide receiver, go get Waddle or Chase if he falls. Like, go get one of those guys and build like a really good team. And then if Hurts doesn't work out this year and we're bad, we're in a really good position with a bunch of skill players to go get another quarterback. But then again, if you think you have your guy for the next 10 years, you got to take him. That's what they did with Wentz, and clearly it paid off because we got a Super Bowl out of it. But it's a bittersweet day. Loved Carson, first jersey I'd bought in a long time. Now I don't know who I'm going to get. We cut Alshon Jeffrey today. Thank God. I was so sick of him. Just wasting money. I never wanted him to begin with. We got him on a cheap deal in 2017. I was like, all right, wow. It surprised me. I'm okay with this now. Because I was always, he played great in the Super Bowl. And when the rumor was Philly was interested in him, I said no, because he's injury prone. He's really not that good as a number one. He's a solid number 2, but he really needs a real good player opposite him. And he's always hurt. And so I don't want to spend a lot of money on a guy who's going to demand a lot of money, who's always hurt. And then we signed him for cheap for a 1-year deal. And I was like, this is awesome. He balled out that year. And I mean, he didn't have 1,000 yards, but he balled out pretty well. And he played awesome in the Super Bowl. They gave him a 4-year extension. I was like, he balled out. Hopefully he can stay it. And then he went right back to the player I thought he was. And so that's been a bummer. Deshaun almost wore his jersey, but I wanted to give Wentz the respect because I've worn Deshaun so much. But Deshaun Jackson, we cut as well. Love Deshaun. Love him forever and always. I just wish he had been healthy, because I think he would have been really good for us if he had just been able to be the healthy he'd been most of his career, where he misses 3 to 4 games a year instead of he's played 8 he's played 6 in the last 2 years or something like that. And that's just a huge bummer. Part of it was, I still think, Doug's coaching, but gonna miss those guys. I'm ready. It is a little fun starting over, but it's a bummer. It's bittersweet. Although clearly hiring Nick Sirianni was not about fixing Wentz, because the whole media narrative was it's all about fixing Wentz. Which coach is going to fix Carson Wentz? Clearly, that was never the plan. And I hope, and I would bet that Jeffrey Lurie knew that hiring Nick, that he knew hey, if we do end up keeping Carson, would you be able to work with him and whatnot? And Nick, I think, clearly sold that the best. But if you guys don't have any thoughts, that's fine. But do you have any thoughts at all about Carson Wentz?
Yeah, I think the Colts perspective is pretty interesting. I'm excited to see what you guys do at quarterback, if you roll with Hurts or if you draft a quarterback. I really like Trey Lance, and so I think that would be an interesting pick.
Like Zach Wilson
6 might be a little high, but I like him a lot. But yeah, the Colts, I think in 3 years, we're either going to look at this trade as really good or wasting an opportunity, because if Wentz gets back to, even the Wentz, 2018, even 2019 Wentz, then it's at least, if they get that Wentz, it's I think a good value deal. They probably give up, if he's healthy, they give up a first and a third, probably a good, they gave up
a first.
They probably will end up giving up a similar amount of value. If they get 2017 Wentz, it's a smash hit. But if they get 2020 Wentz, that trade's terrible, especially if they end up giving a first, because if they trade for one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL and you give up a first and a third, everyone's gonna be like, you just wasted a brilliant offensive line that you've built. You've got some good young receivers. You got a really talented defense. You just wasted
Great run game.
Yeah. Or they're going to be looking at it and saying, Carson Wentz, you took a gamble that ended up working and you gave up a good price for him. So I think it's gonna be really interesting because I'm just curious to see how Wentz plays, because if he doesn't adjust, he's either gonna really get back and play really well, or he's just gonna keep spiraling, I think. And so I think the first handful of weeks is gonna be really interesting watching the Colts.
I want to say too, I want to watch every Colt game next year. I'm not a Colts fan. It's similar how I feel with Chiefs and Cardinals, where every week I try to watch their games with my Eagle game because I just really like those teams. But I'm going to probably try my best to watch every single Colt game. I usually have a few games on. I try not to do that when it's the Eagle game, but if the Colts are playing, I'm going to put them up on the other TV just because I want to see how Carson Wentz balls out. I want to see what we lost. It'd be real crazy to watch the two. I mean, I just hope whoever we get is good. I just don't want to be bad forever. Give me this 1 year off, and then let's get back to it in 2022. Kyle, you have any thoughts?
Well, this trade, at least from the Colts side, it just makes me love the GM of the Colts, Chris Ballard, all the more so, because I think it's kind of like what Nick said. Like right now, this trade looks brilliant. Like if they can get, at best 2018 Wentz and even better 2017 Wentz, so that team could really be shooting for the stars and be in contention for Super Bowls. And they wouldn't have to give up too much in order for that to happen. But if down the road, if that's not what ends up happening, that's really unfortunate, and that's not a good look for the Colts organization. But I don't know. I have a good feeling about Wentz and that situation with the Colts. At least I think that they have a smart coaching staff built in there, and I feel like Frank Reich could be able to get Wentz to come back down to earth a bit and just be able to regroup and rethink on his mechanics. And I could see that really working out to where he could be looking a lot better than he did last year. And with the Eagles,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you.
Oh, well, I'll just finish up with the Eagles by saying that it is unfortunate, like just for 2-3 years ago, for going from a Super Bowl caliber team to just having to blow it up and do it all over again. Like that really sucks, but it's probably the right call to do in general. Like it does make me feel a little bit less about Howie Roseman than I did previously, but it's just one of those things that might have been inevitable regardless. So it probably sucks a lot, and I feel for you, Alex, but this could also be a really good thing for your team moving forward.
Yeah. Two things off of that real quick, and then we can move over to our offseason. One is, yes, they got Frank Reich over there, my boy, but who do you got left? We took everybody. Nick Sirianni, DC. We took everybody from that staff. We took them all, baby. We're rolling with the Colts offense now. And I do like Nick because he worked really well with Andrew Luck and then Jacoby and then Phillip Rivers this year. And then we got the QB coach from who just made Herbie Sherby a stud muffin to be our offensive coordinator. So we're in a good position here. And the NFL is my second thing here. The NFL is such a what have you done for me lately thing. It's just like movies. Because Kyle and I are Nick, Kyle and I are such big fans, and Kyle and I have another YouTube channel about movies of fans of movies. And that industry is such of what have you done for me lately. And so is sports. Howie Roseman for the last 3 years has been a top 3 GM in football. He's been widely considered one of the best GMs in football. And now he's considered one of the worst. And I don't like him. The second that team gets into the playoffs, he makes the trade that ends up, being the serious one. I'm all back in on Howie Roseman. Like I'm all back in on him. All is forgiven. It's such a what have you done for me lately league. And that's the same thing with Hurts. Hurts go win games. Now I'm going to love you plenty, bud. Even if I still like Carson. But anyway, so should we move over to our off-season tasks here? Things the to-do list, good. Wish list. Nick, you want to start this one off? You've been pumped for it. Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, I've been thinking about reload. It because that's what we need to do. So obviously we were one step away from the Super Bowl, kind of a badly executed game cost us the Super Bowl. And so I think the Packers are in a pretty interesting spot because they do have a handful of free agents. And we are currently over the cap by about 10 million. If the cap ends up at 180, obviously if it goes up to 185, that would just be awesome for the Packers. But I think the first thing of business for the Packers, it needs to be extending Davante Adams and restructuring Aaron Rodgers' contract. Davante Adams, I think, is the best receiver in the league at least top 3 right now, especially after his last season. Wide receiver is such a valuable position. And if we give him an extension, we can create about $8 million in cap space, which is really important. Then restructuring Aaron's contract in a way that we can move his cap around so we can sign other players, but also kind of recommitting to him because the Jordan Love pick still makes 0 sense. And so I think it's pretty inevitable that his contract's going to get restructured and that it actually could very well be us recommitting to him for 2 years or even 3 years. And if it becomes the case that we don't, then people should be really thinking about Aaron Rodgers getting moved in a year if the Packers decide not to. That'll say, sorry, just drop some. That'll say a lot if we decide not to restructure. Those are the first 2 things. Secondly, don't re-sign any of our free agents. Aaron Jones, Kevin King, Corey Linsley, Jamal Williams, let them all go, especially Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Maybe if you get Jamal on a really small contract, but you drafted A.J. Dillon in the 2nd round. You drafted a running back in the 2nd round last year. You have to stay the course. You have to roll with him and then maybe draft another running back who's a little bit more of a pass catcher, but you got to let them go, even though I love them so much. Running back, you just can't pay running backs. It just doesn't work out. Kevin King obviously is going to demand a king's ransom, probably, maybe a little less with this suppressed. Oh, didn't even think about it, but there we go. But
boom,
Kevin King, get him out of there. Corey Linsley, I would like to keep, but his contract's going to be a little bit too much, and we're going to need to likely pick up a few free agents. One that we talked about earlier would be pretty great. So I think letting him go is the smart move for the Packers because they're going to have to cover up for the whiffed 1st and 4th round picks last year where you drafted a 3rd string quarterback. And then the third thing is go hard after JJ Watt and also go hard after a veteran cornerback. Our 2nd cornerback position is really volatile, hasn't been very good. We've spent an insane amount of draft capital over the last 6 years on cornerbacks, and one of them is worthy of a second paycheck. And that's Jair Alexander, who has turned into a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. So obviously I love Jair Alexander, but everyone else has been horrific misses. And we've spent a lot of 1st and 2nd round picks on cornerbacks. Obviously, Richard Sherman might be a little too expensive. If we get JJ Watt, he's basically out of the picture. I would love Richard Sherman, Patrick Peterson, AJ Boye, maybe, but he might be a little too undersized, and we need an outside cornerback. And then also, the last thing is go after either a veteran wide receiver. I think cutting Funches is likely, so I think we should add another weapon for Aaron and hopefully draft one because we especially, Devontae Adams is getting to his 30s pretty quick. And so drafting a wide receiver is still at the top of the list. But yeah, I think the important thing is not getting too focused for the Packers on free agents from last year and really looking at JJ Watt or someone who can help bolster the pass rush. Preston Smith is probably going to get cut or at least his contract restructured. Because when you think about Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, those kind of 2 quarterbacks that we're going to be going up against, you have to be able to pressure them. And Zadarius Smith keeps getting double teamed. We need to add someone opposite of him that can help disrupt. And so I think those are the main keys, keeping Devontae and Aaron happy, and then going out and trying to get a cornerback, a pass rusher. And then in the draft, I'm thinking wide receiver and interior defensive lineman as well.
Kyle, what about your Hawks? You want to go next? What's your offseason plan? Nick's got a good one. Retool, reload.
Nick does have a good one. Well, first things first is that free agency is about to begin, but I think before we even get into free agency, when it comes to the Hawks, the Hawks need to figure out who they need to re-sign and then who to give extensions to. So guys
trade
Russ,
right
now,
maybe?
Top 3. What'd you say, Nick?
Trade Russ for 3
He said
first
trade
rounders?
Russell Wilson for 3 first-round picks.
Funny.
Not a
the
bad place to
Niners.
start. Not a bad place to start.
We're not getting
To the
him out of here.
Niners.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh God, don't say that.
Flip him for Matt
right.
Stafford.
I was just going to say to the Rams.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this free agent class that we have right now, the top 3 guys are Shaquille Griffin, Chris Carson, and KJ Wright. But honestly, I would say let Shaquille Griffin and Chris Carson go, and then try and re-sign
Really?
KJ Wright. I think he was the most productive, and I think he's the most valuable part of our defense. It's kind of like Nick was saying, like paying for running backs is not really worth it. And I do like Shaquille Griffin a lot, and I do hope that we find a way to keep him. But I just think like for our best value and like the most productive guy, it should go to KJ Wright. And then the other guys that we should think about for extensions is Jamal Adams, Tyler Lockett, and Carlos Dunlap. I think those guys are integral, and I really hope that we can give those guys extensions soon, so that way we can get a better look at what our cap situation is going to be for the next couple of years. But I just don't know who the extensions would go to. I hope for Jamal it would go to him, just because we gave up those 2 first-round picks, and we should at least keep the guy instead of only using him for like 2 years. And Dunlap, just because he helped so much with our pass rush, and hopefully we can do better with the pass rush on the defensive side in the draft coming up. And then Tyler, I've just loved Tyler so much. I just want to see how we can make that possible with him staying. And I think that would make Russ very happy if we kept Tyler as well. But that one is kind of a question mark. He's in his 30s right now.
Is he
30
31?
or 31. Yeah, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. He's older than I realized.
Yeah, I would have guessed like 28, maybe becoming 29.
So isn't Quentin Dunbar also a free agent?
He is. He's barely played all season, and I think at this point the Hawks are just fine with letting him go. I mean, if we did get him for a cheap veteran deal, I'm
curious
with that,
what do you think they like? Do you think they're just going to go at cornerback in the draft if you let Griffin and Dunbar go?
I think so. The draft was going to be the next point that I have to offer when it comes to that, but I think they'll look at it heavily in the draft. But before I get into the draft part, I think when it comes to the free agency market, we have to focus on shaping up the O-line. Like, we can't be skipping out on like these really cheap deals. And I know our cap situation isn't great, especially with COVID, affecting the NFL and for everyone's cap space. But I think at this point, like, the Seahawks just have to bite the bullet and say, yes, Mr. Russell Wilson, whatever you want, Mr. Russell Wilson. So I do think that they need to make a big splash and do better in like the free agency market. Did I cut out hard?
No, you're just handing over the keys to the franchise to Russell Wilson.
To us,
yeah. Because it's Russell
Is he the
Wilson.
guy?
He deserves it, but he's
Guy
obviously
barely beat out Matt Flynn. Barely.
did it with ease, that guy. But I do think like we need to focus on protecting him better with a better offensive line. And I also wouldn't mind if we went out and either found a really productive tight end, or if we found just a third wide receiver option. Like, if we got one of those two places filled, I would actually be really okay with how things are shaping out on the offensive side. And then finally with the draft, we only have 4 draft picks, and most of them are in the bottom round. So John Schneider has to find a way to work his magic and make more draft picks out of nothing. I don't know how he could do that. And it doesn't have to be like, more draft picks in the first or second rounds. I don't think that's very possible, but we have been able to find some good players, but in like the 3rd rounds and below. So if he's finding a way to go from 4 picks to 8 picks, I think that could be a good win, and we could be able to find some good underrated guys.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the big difference between the Packers and Seahawks where they're at is this: the Packers have a ton of people. We already cut Christian Kirksey and Rick Wagner to cut cap space, but you guys don't have as many players available for cap casualties, right? Like, the Packers have a handful of cap that they can cut pretty easily, while I think, right, the Seahawks don't have as much. It's kind of all in the key players right now.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Yeah, it should be interesting.
But I'm very nervous about this offseason, between trying to make Russ happy and between the limited cap space and limited draft picks. I have no idea how we're going to work our magic like we normally do, but we'll see, man.
I'm really curious to see what you guys do at cornerback, because I just thought it was a surefire thing you'd keep Shaq Griffin, but it'd be interesting if you let him go, what you do there.
Yeah, Griffin's pretty good. I don't know why you move off of him.
I mean, I don't really want to. He flashes. He's a very good, not great player, but I still like him enough, and he's productive enough where I would be okay with keeping him. I just think KJ Wright, so to my surprise, like, he just had such a bounce back year. I wouldn't mind him on another 1 or 2 year deal as compared to Shaq Griffin, and not seeing too much more production than what we have. But
Fair enough. Well, let's move on to a team that isn't reloading, that they're rebuilding. The Eagles can go in two directions. I actually think we're a year out from the playoffs if Howie is smart, and it depends all on Nick Sirianni and how the man coaches and how the man has practice. Because if he can get guys to be healthy, then I think if you hang on to most of these most of the pieces on this roster and just add a couple spots, we're in pretty good position. We are also a year or two out if we keep cutting our losses with all these bad vets. To get some cap space next year and the following years. And that's huge. And I think because that's basically what happened in 2017, where in 2016, Wentz's rookie year, we kind of had some dead money we had to move off of, still the Chip Kelly guys, a few people we had to move. And then all of a sudden we had all this money. We go out and we get Chris Long and LeGarrette Blount, and we go fill in these holes. I think we're not that far out, and it depends on Jalen Hurts and what they do at quarterback. But I think at 6, you have to hit Howie Roseman. You do nothing but miss draft pick after draft pick. And then when you do, you're part of a coaching regime that doesn't use them when you finally hit. Like Miles Sanders, who was barely used last year, even though he was healthy for most of it. I think you can take any position except running back at 6, really. I'd take an O-lineman, a wide receiver. I don't really want a tight end, even though I know Kyle Pitts is really, really good. And a lot of people have us going. A lot of mock drafts have us taking him. I don't really want him, but at least not at that spot. I'd rather go O-line, wide receiver, but I'd be okay with tight end. D-line, cornerback, linebacker, safety. I'm okay with all of it. There's a linebacker out of Penn State that is a stud that we could take at 6 that I would be all for. If one of these wide receivers can fall, or honestly, if the best can fall, then I'll take whoever they value as the best. Because I know
Smith would be awesome.
If Smith falls, Chase, Waddle, any of them fall, I'm down. But I think
one of them will be there.
It sounds like we're moving off of Zach Ertz. I think it's a bad call. I think you keep Zach Ertz and you keep obviously you're going to keep Dallas Goedert, but I think you roll with those two and you try to fix whatever's up with Zach Ertz. If we trade him, we trade him. But I think you do not move off of Fletcher Cox. I think you move off of Brandon Graham before you move off of Fletch. A lot of people think we're going to cut Fletcher Cox, let alone not trade him.
Send him to the pack.
If we cut him, he better go to the pack, and I will rightfully root with Nick all season long because that is just a dumb move. I get your clearing cap, but I think there is a potential for this team to be pretty good in a year if Hurts can even just take a step forward. Or whatever rookie QB you go with. I still think a rookie QB is not the best way to go, especially if we have potentially 2 first-round draft picks next year when you can use that to go get a quarterback. But if we do get a QB, I still the same thought process. If they truly believe this is a 3-year build, that it's going to take 2 to 3 years for the Eagles to get back into the playoffs, then cut your losses with everybody. Mortgage the farm. Trade them all. I don't want that though, because I think you should always try to compete. Doug Peterson, you should always try to compete. You should not toss in Nate Sudfeld at the end of the game to lose it.
It's fun.
But I think the Eagles I really do think we have a year where we could maybe go 7-9 next year and so show some flashes, keep Darius Slay, get these guys really moving in this new system, and that's the last thing. Trust this system and let it run for the next 3 years total. You need at least 3 years to really try this and to trust these young guys. You brought in nothing but young coaches. Nothing but young. They're all like under 40 or something like that, or nobody's older than like 42 on the main coaching staff. Let those guys cook. They know talent. They're former players. Let them run the show a little bit here. Let them cook it up. But that's what I think the Eagles could do. But it's going to be, I mean, you guys are just going to be retool the chess match. We got to get the board out and put the pieces on. And that's, it can be a little fun starting the game like that. But I hope we hang on to Fletcher Cox. So Nick, did you use, some thoughts on the Eagles there?
I do. I think you guys are in a really interesting spot. I think any team with a rookie quarterback deal, and how you're moving off of, Wentz, and so you're gonna have a lot of dead cap. Obviously, the biggest dead cap hit in history. But I think
just for this year,
but I do think the Eagles would be smart. If they think Trey Lance is their guy and they draft him, fair enough. We've seen what GMs do when they think they've got their guy. They spit in the face of the MVP, send a first and fourth round pick to get Jordan Love. So that could happen. But I think it would be really interesting if you guys do go wide receiver, which could be such a valuable position for not only Hurts,
for Jalen Reagor.
For Jalen Reagor and another receiver, but it'd be helpful for Hurts, or if you move off of Hurts in the future, linebacker, and any position really, if you don't go quarterback, and then you kind of see what you have in Hurts, and it could kind of be, because you do have some, it's not like Hurts is a 7th round draft pick. You took him in the 2nd round last year.
Yeah, we value him highly.
And he played pretty good too. And I could see a similar situation as like the Browns a couple years ago when the Browns rolled with Kaiser for a year. Now, I don't think Hurts is nearly as bad as Kaiser was, but they took a swing with Kaiser.
I think he's much better.
Just let him go. I think if you just let Hurts go, if he's good, then you can just build around him. And in a year or two, you can definitely be in the playoff picture if Hurts is the guy. If he's not, it allows you to restructure some cap, maybe draft a new person and then move forward like all of these teams and like you did just 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago with Wentz. So I think if I was Howie, I would go after not a quarterback and obviously not a running back with the 6th overall pick. Might not even be a bad idea to trade that pick to get more picks, to trade back a little bit.
I had that conversation
just try to stock up on assets and see what you have in Hurts, because maybe you miss on a receiver, you still have a 1st round draft pick, put in Jalen Reagor, so it wouldn't be a bad idea, I think, to trade back too.
Yeah, I shout out to our buddy Zach, friend of the show, been on the show before. I was talking to him about this yesterday or Saturday, and I'm okay trading back as long as we are not trading back super far. I don't think the Eagles don't get a top 10 draft pick in often, and on their own, it's just statistically not happened very often because historically we're actually a pretty good franchise. But I think if you can trade back to 9, maybe 10, maybe 11, and maybe one of these top 3 receivers might slip a little bit back there as teams who really need quarterbacks, and you can snag another 1st round pick or a 2nd round pick or something like that. I think you roll with that. I think that's a good thing. But if Howie trades out to go get a 3rd round pick in this year's draft and he trades back to 16 just for a 3rd round pick, Howie's draft is not great historically. It's horrible. So I don't want that at all. I would much rather, your talent pool of getting a top guy is usually statistically pretty much better. If you can take one of these top guys, they're probably going to be pretty good. So I don't want him to do that. He'd have to get something seriously good back to trade, I think, back anywhere past 13. And I do think rolling with Hurts, I think Hurts is much better than Kaiser. I like your comparison. I wouldn't mind if they have another QB in this draft that they think's pretty solid and could actually be like a legit starter, but might be a year or 2 out, and he is in the 2nd round or the 3rd round. Now I'm okay taking another quarterback to compete with Hurts when you go get somebody who's a little bit later in the draft. I'd be down with that. Like if they have a guy they like with that Colts 3rd rounder who happens to be there, they're like, man, this kid could actually be something special if he gets a real shot. Let's give him the real shot. Then I'm okay with it. But any other thoughts on the Eagles anybody have, or should we just touch on the NBA real quick?
Let's touch on NBA.
So NBA, the Miami Heat are inconsistent and not great, and it's because of this COVID protocol. They're starting to play a little better, beat Lakers the other night in a fun game. They're only like 3.5, 4 games back from 4th, and they're in 10th. So we're not very good over there in our conference. What are we? We're the East, right? I don't know why I blanked on it. Yeah, we're the East.
East is
the East not doing really good, and I think the Heat will be fine.
Spurs are the 6th seed in the West right now, and if they were in the East, they'd be the 3 seed.
Let's go,
which is pretty impressive. Yeah, but I don't know. Do you guys see that Nets Clippers game last night? Anyone?
You tuned into the old highlights.
It was pretty. The Nets have been kind of on a roll, beating the Suns, then the Lakers without Anthony Davis, but they beat them pretty handily, and then they beat the Clippers, and they've done it all without. Yeah, they did it all without Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving missed a game. They're looking scary. They're looking like they're actually playing defense right now, pretty effectively. And they are going, I'm definitely rooting for them to get healthy, Lakers to get healthy, and that to be the finals if our Spurs and Heat don't make it, obviously. Which true, Spurs Heat finals will be way more fun.
Time.
But yeah, Kyrie Irving too. We talked earlier about like all sports. What have you done for me lately? And same with Steph Curry. Those two are playing unreal right now.
Seriously.
And we've totally forgotten about them and the Kyrie disrespect. I mean, you could say whatever you want about who he is off the court, but on the court, he's just so much fun to watch. And so, I'm a big James Harden fan, so I'm having fun watching him really adapt his game and proving if they win a championship and he does it as a true point guard and being a facilitator, it's going to completely change his legacy. So there's a lot to play for in Brooklyn. But yeah, I'm curious, do you guys have any other general thoughts? The All-Star game, Dame got snubbed, I think.
Yeah, Dame getting snubbed is whack, but
it was a bit weird.
I mean, it's also for like it's Luka. Like you're just counting your riches in the NBA when it comes to the All-Star game, which is why the All-Star game is actually like fun compared to like the Pro Bowl, because a lot of the times half the players don't want to go to the Pro Bowl and they don't play hard, so you end up getting Mitch Trubisky in the Pro Bowl, and it's just not as fun when you get LeBron and everybody. And in the NBA, I mean, come on, we've all played basketball. You get chippy when you're playing with the boys in the gym. Towards like those guys towards the end of that game start to tend to get chippy when it's close, and it's awesome. The All-Star game is so fun to watch. I think it's the best All-Star game like that in sports. Yes, Dame was a snub, but he'll be on the full roster.
Definitely.
So should Jimmy and Bam on a bio, which Bam is playing really great. He's doing exactly what.
Do you think Jimmy will make it?
Last I heard, he was looking like he probably will, but he also hasn't
just because he hasn't played that much. Yeah, that's the one concern.
Bam for sure. Bam's going on there for sure.
Especially since you've
Bam
started
has taken
winning
a little bit of a leap.
more.
If Bam can just bulk up a little bit, I think he's gonna take off even more. And I already think I think he's a year or two out. If he can really continue to up his upward stride, he's a year or two out from being like a starting lineup all-star caliber player. He's that good.
I mean, he's awesome.
His jump shots improved a lot, but Heat need to be rolling. They're actually playing in about 15 minutes.
Well, there we go. Yeah, I think, Dame, I think the biggest thing is it's tough to have a player like Luka. The Mavericks are not a top 8 seed in the West right now. And for basketball, it's tough to have. Luka's played basically every game for the Mavericks. I think it's tough to have a starter like not affect the game that much to at least get them in the top 8 versus Dame's been missing CJ McCollum, and there's been a lot of injuries on that Blazers team, and they're at the 4 seed, I think, right now. That's, I think, the biggest difference in why I think Dame should be a starter, but obviously Luka is still awesome and very deserving. I hope my boy DeMar DeRozan is able to make it. He probably won't because we're a little too small, but I think he definitely is deserving of that 12th or 13th spot in the West. And also thinking of DeMar's father passed away over the weekend, and he's missed a handful of games. So hope he's doing all right. And speaking of the Spurs, you talked about that, the Heat, how they've struggled with COVID. Spurs were going so good without COVID, and then 5 of our players have it. We've had 4 games postponed.
Positive?
We're back on Wednesday.
Or they were.
I think 4
exposed.
4 or 5 players tested positive, and they've been in quarantine for a little over a week now, and they're not playing on Wednesday. Which I guess they didn't play on Wednesday when this comes out. So the Spurs might take a little bit of a tumble in the standings at the 6th seed right now, which will be interesting to see how these teams react to it. Obviously, like a Mavericks are another team that's been really hit by COVID, but yeah, I'm really curious. Do you guys have, I know we've talked a little bit about trade deadline, and Heat are an interesting team. Do you think the Heat make a move? It doesn't seem like Bradley Beal's going to get moved. They're playing better, but maybe for like a Victor Oladipo type player, do you think they might make a move here?
Miami needs somebody, I think, strong on the defense. I think we're missing Jay Crowder, and they signed Avery Bradley because he's a strong defender, but Avery Bradley has barely played because he was the first to get hit with COVID. If he can get back and get consistent, maybe not as much, but I think we need a strong defender. I think our shooting isn't the huge problem. Our biggest problem is turnovers, and it's just because of Eric Spoelstra's coaching. He preaches passing the ball so much, but like Duncan, Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Hero, all great shooters, and I don't think you trade any of them. I think the goal is to re-sign Duncan next year. I think Hero, kid's 22 years old, 21 years old. He is going to be an all-star if he can keep going, and I don't think you give up on him. He is so freaking talented. So I don't think you move him, Bam, maybe Duncan, even though I think Duncan can be really good too. He's starting to become a lethal three-point shooter, but if we can go make a small couple moves like we did last year, I think that would be the smart key when we brought in Iggy and Crowder. But if we can get a serious piece, then always do it. I mean, even if you have to give up somebody but you got to do it if Kyrie Irving ends up getting moved, which I doubt he will. But
not now.
Victor, I wouldn't mind, but I
think
Victor hasn't been super healthy.
I mean, he hasn't been super healthy, but if he is healthy, I think he'd be a perfect fit because he's a pretty good defender on the perimeter, and he would be really good potentially helping you guys with turnovers because he'd be really good as the dominant ball handler in a pick and roll with him and Bam with kind of, Hero and Butler off ball would be really hard to stop. I think that would be an interesting move. PJ Tucker is a guy that you guys should have on your radar. Great defender and great 3-point shooter. I think him to the Bucks, if they could ever pull that off, would be huge. The Bucks are interesting. I don't know if you guys have paid attention to them at all, but they've really kind of fallen off not fallen off a cliff. They're still good, but they're not defensively. They were first in defensive rating the last 2 years, and this year they're 13th. And so they're kind of been struggling because Brook Lopez, who was such a good signing for them a few years ago, has been pretty rough. And I think they might need to move Giannis to the 5 eventually, or at least in crunch time. But yeah, do you guys have any other NBA thoughts? I'm excited to see the Spurs play. It's been like
we're not even halfway done with the NBA season, and I know. I'm loving it. I've never watched so much NBA game. I've watched almost every Heat game. I love it. And League Pass was a great call.
100%. It's going to be interesting to see how they schedule it because I think there's rumors that there's going to be a ton of 5 games in 7 days coming up, so they can make sure because there's been so many games postponed because they haven't released. They've only released the first 37 games, I think, for most teams. They're going to put everybody in like a mini bubble. Just put all those teams in one city and let them play. I don't think so, but I think because normally when you go on road trips, you either play East or West teams.
Yeah.
I think they're going to switch it up where you might be on the road and might play, one West team and then an East team that might be close in the same trip, which is going to be interesting. It's going to be the most different outside of the bubble that we've seen. It's going to be seems like it could be more different than what we've seen so far this year, which has already been tough on a lot of teams, but yeah, I'm excited. I hope DeMar makes the All-Star game. He deserves it.
Awesome. And Jimmy, let's just put them all there. Let's just get them Spurs from the Heat. Go vote. All right, guys. For the Get Back guys, we're done getting back. We're going to get back to whatever we do when we're not here. Guys, remember to do all that great stuff. Follow us on all the platforms. We're on Pocket Cast, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Go check us out. For Kyle, I know it's been a minute since they've heard your voice. Why don't you say a little something sweet?
Something sweet.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.